Welcome into the latest Fanalyst interview. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at 5 Reasons Sports, and of course at Fanalyst US. And today we've got Alfredo Arteaga. You used to know him as Uptown Report on Twitter. That's the first time I've said that in a real long time. You can find him now at Alf_Arteaga, and he's there at his home studio in the Miami Lakes area down here in South Florida. He is one of the hosts of 3 Yards Per Carry, which is one of our most popular podcasts. It's actually the most popular independent podcast on the Miami Dolphins. Alfredo may have more numbers for you on that, but in a very crowded space, it took over very quickly. He's also been in mainstream media, but he also was one of the kings of the Dolphins message boards. And that's what we're going to get into today, because this is one of the paths that Fanalysts have taken as the ability to express yourself about your team has evolved over the past few years. So I want to start there with you, and then we'll kind of get into traditional media and how we met, which was actually doing something with the great Stu Gatz, John Wiener, and Billy Gill and everybody else there, and Steve Goldstein. But your sort of, I guess, the fame of you and your co-host, Simon Clancy, who's based in England, and Chris Kaufman, who also part of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, who's based in Tampa, kind of began on the message board platforms that were really popular on the Dolphins, about 15 years ago, right?
Yeah, it started on finheaven.com, and then it moved on to thefins.com. And they had a pay-to-read portion of their site where we were all in there, and we would, give our thoughts on the draft, on free agent signings, on the games, on all 22. And we built a following over like almost 20 years.
And again, did you all use your real names there?
No, I was section 126
I remember.
That's where I had season tickets for almost 20 years for the Dolphins. Chris Kaufman was CK Parrott, and Simon was Boomer.
Yeah, I remember Boomer. Actually, that's before Boomer took on a different connotation. But I used to interact with you guys on there not knowing who you were, because when I was a Dolphins beat writer in traditional media, working at first for the Palm Beach Post and then the Sentinel and the Herald, where I was a columnist and covered the Dolphins quite a bit, I would go on the message boards and I would interact. This was pre-Twitter. Twitter was 2009. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to find out what was going on in the team, and it was always a big thing for me, because when I wrote a column on the Dolphins, it would get posted on these sites, and then everybody would basically flame me for what I wrote that particular day. I was too much of a Jay Fiedler defender or whatever it was, that this would go on. And I got to know the various characters. We probably sparred, and I didn't even know it. And then I'm sure I did with Simon. There's no question that I did with Simon, because he has kind of that persona. But you built up this following there, and the three of you created this bond through message boards. Now, these message boards, I mean, other than Reddit, like Twitter kind of replaced this, didn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, these message boards are now, you're talking about readerships of under 200, 300 consistently. Mm. So, yeah, these message boards are, they've gone the way of the dodo bird. They're nowhere now. It's Twitter. Twitter is, for sports, that's where you're at. Twitter. Well, unless you really, really, want to lose your mind and you want to go on Facebook, but I don't recommend that. I don't even have a Facebook account for that.
I know you don't.
Very reason. So sports and Twitter and politics. Let's be real. That's what Twitter's about.
Well, no doubt, and that is, as we kind of move towards what Fanalyst is going to become. Obviously, we're borrowing from some of these concepts of Twitter. But that second part you mentioned, the politics, is what we're going to be able to filter out. So actually what we're trying to create is kind of an improved Twitter that is more designed towards just getting what you want and nothing else, particularly during the games. But so you're on the message boards, the three of you guys, and then you and I developed a relationship because I was kind of the third host on Sports Bang, which was hosted by, it was the concept, it was the brainchild of John Stu Gatz Wiener. And Steve Goldstein, of course, is the Panthers play-by-play man. And they were the hosts along with, I know there were other hosts to begin with. Joy Taylor, I think, was there. Amber Wilson, obviously, who became a staple on 790 The Ticket.
And Allison Williams.
Allison Williams. So a lot of people who went national were on this little Sunday morning show that aired on CBS 4. And I was the fill-in. Whenever Stu Gatz or Steve Goldstein couldn't make it, I would fill in. But you and Guillermo, Billy Gill, known from the Le Batard show, you would be in the back cooking up the stats and kind of, so you were in the mainstream world. I know it was, we would record it during the week and it aired Sunday morning at, I think, 10 o'clock. But you
Saturday
were in
morning
that,
at 11.
Saturday morning 11. That's right. I used to set my DVR for it just to see what I said that week. But you were in the mainstream world.
Yeah, absolutely. I did some consulting work for ESPN, for CBS Sports, and Yahoo Sports, and I used to send the Le Batard show like pretty much like almost everybody else at the time. You didn't, communicate through Twitter. You used to send emails. I used to send Dan Le Batard emails about this stat or that stat. And I remember it all really got started around 2005, 2006. I wrote a blog post predicting that the Heat team was good enough, basically based on a few factors: offensive and defensive efficiency and defensive rebound rate, that the 2005-2006 Heat team was going to win the championship. And I predicted it before the season. They were going to beat the San Antonio Spurs. I sent that to Dan Le Batard. He gave it a lot of airplay. Then he just started taking my stuff as I would send it to him, and he would talk about it on the air. Fast forward a bunch of years later, Stu Gott's a very strange email shows up in my inbox saying, call me at this number, and it's coming from a weird email. I call, and it's John Wiener. It's Stu Gotts. He goes, hey, it's Stu Gotts. Hey, buddy, how you doing? And I'm like, okay, that's nice. What do you need? And he says, do you have any experience doing TV production? And which is a very weird question to ask somebody that if you don't know, right?
Right.
And I said, well, I took it in high school, I took some of it in college. And he goes, cool. This is Billy Gill's number. Call him. I want you to work for me. And I didn't say yes or no, but I said, you know what? I'm going to call Billy Gill. I hit it off right away with Billy Gill. And I met him over at CBS Studios. I talked to John Wiener, and the first thing he told me was, look, there's not a lot of money in this, but you get to work with us, and that's kind of fun. And, 4 years later, I like the work that we did on Sports Bang. Like you said, we had Allison Williams, Joy Taylor, Amber Wilson, and you, Goldie, and the rest of the guys. Even Mike Ryan was one of the guys there. We even had Bryant McKinney for a month. So it was a fun show. I really enjoyed it. And it was kind of in the Renaissance area of, the LeBron Big Three era. So even our little show was pulling, ones and twos on a Saturday, 11 o'clock, right before college football, and if you know anything about local ratings, ones and twos, you're talking about, almost 120,000 viewers. That's not bad.
No, it's not. Well, like you said, there wasn't a lot of money in it for anybody but Stu Gotts, which is a whole.
Yeah, but Stu Gotts. Yeah, he was making out. None of us were making any.
I get those $200 checks. Sometimes that took a few months, but eventually I collected them, as did Amber. But let's transition then. So then, you're continuing to sort of be a force on the message boards, the three of you guys. And then you decided to start a podcast, and I don't want to get into bore people with the details of how we came to be, because I was, I had one podcast with Chris Whittingham. We're like, okay, maybe you and I discussed it. Maybe we'll create a network here. But just the idea of the three of you starting a podcast, how long did you discuss that, and why did you think it would work?
We kept talking about it, and then we saw there really weren't any alternatives. And then all of a sudden, of course, when we started our podcast, everybody else started one. So, and now there's like 40, 50 Dolphin podcasts, but we talked about it for a very, very long time. And it went from, okay, let's do a YouTube video show. And I was like, you know what? I don't think people want to get into the weeds of, okay, lead ISOs and cover zeros and all that stuff. I think we're more suited for audio, so people can work out or take their time to listen to us, because ours, I'm not going to call us highbrow, because we do have some, we do joke on the show.
Yes.
But we do talk about concepts that can, make your eyes glossy if you're watching us on YouTube. So we decided, you know what, let's do it. And of course we got together, and it's been 4 years later, and we've had a lot of success, a lot of downloads, and we keep growing every single year.
Well, keep growing. You even have your own OnlyFins account, not OnlyFans, OnlyFins.
That was the genius of Chris Kaufman, to get a bunch of people to pay us just to watch us talk to each other all day.
But again, that is part of it, and that's what I want to touch on here with you, because I do think that a big part of the kind of the whole Fanalyst trend here is that fans want smarter content. They don't necessarily believe what the coaches and players are telling them, because the coaches and players are taught, and I was in this world, to say as little as possible, particularly about strategy, more so about strategy than anything else. And in fact, we've tripped on that at times because the team sometimes doesn't like how much strategy we talk. Particularly, the Dolphins are a little bit more sensitive about this than the Heat or the other teams are, because obviously there's a lot that goes into football. Do you think? Would you say that the average football fan, average NFL fan, is more educated than 15 years ago? And again, wants this kind of content more than maybe they did 15 years ago?
Absolutely, and I think it's lagging the NBA, but it's getting there. And it's getting there fast. I remember there was a time where in the NBA, and I probably fell into that as well, which was I would look at the box score and say, "Oh my God, they got out rebounded today," but I didn't know why they got out rebounded. I saw they shot a better shooting they had a better shooting percentage than their opponent, and I said, "Okay, maybe that was the reason why they won." And lo and behold, there are many numbers behind that actually tell you the truth of a game. All right, so. Through statistics over the years, you start learning more about the game, and then you start getting more interested as you watch games. And it's almost an addiction. You want to get more of it because you want to learn more of it. And to be honest with you, I've enjoyed sports much more in this analytical era because I could watch other teams and I could understand them. And it's much, much more different than it used to be. Now I understand the game much better. Especially through statistics, because I already knew football because I played it. I played in high school and I played a little in college, so I know how football works. The statistical part, I had no idea until you're talking about 2008 is when the Hollinger stats started making the rounds on ESPN. So we're talking about less than 15 years ago.
Yeah, I think the tools have made people smarter, the access to the tools, and that's the other thing. We have access to tools. I know you've complained a lot about the All-22 this year and what the NFL has done with it, but the reality is these things like Synergy in the NBA or All-22, where you have access to the film, the same access that the coaches have, there's no reason that people can't create their own content now. And I think to a certain degree, and we'll close here without, flaming a particular team here, but I feel like the teams are scared of the Fanalysts for this reason, right? Because they don't really want their stuff out there, right? Like they don't really want it explained, and I think we're caught a little bit. I think we've been caught on the NFL side, because I think the NFL again is much more protective of stuff than the NBA is, where it's a sort of a hybrid. They kind of know they sort of need to deal with us because this is a growing space, and the fans are the ones who are the most passionate about their team, and to a certain degree, they drive revenue for their teams. But they also don't want the fans knowing too much.
No.
Right?
Yeah, I remember when Synergy was around for the NBA, and I remember I sat down, and first of all, you have to learn how to use that thing. And I had a guy explain to me, okay, this is how you filter things in and out. And I said, okay, you know what? I want to find every single possession that Dwayne Wade and Kobe Bryant ever guarded each other in their entire career. I ended up finding 378 possessions. It was like 33 minutes and like 50 seconds or something like that. And I sat there and I watched it. And I'm like, this is the most fascinating thing I've ever seen in my life. That was almost 10 years ago, really.
Yeah.
The NFL is finally catching on, although, the next gen stats is a nice thing. Their Game Pass has been a disaster.
Yeah.
But, the NBA has done a very good job of keeping up. The NFL, I believe, has lagged almost 10 years behind, but they're getting there. And as they keep going, it's going to make smarter fans, and it's going to create more fans just like me that want to dig deeper into the games, learn more about the games.
And even MLB has started to get into it. They've started, and we know how far behind they are, decades usually, but they have started getting into the next gen stuff. All right, I'm going to close here, and everybody should follow Alf_Arteaga. The one message board story I wanted to tell, all I'm going to allow you to say is the name that was used. That's it. Not the writer, but just to tell you the power that the message boards had in those days, okay? Your two co-hosts, Chris Kaufman, who, by the way, manages like $1 billion up in Tampa, And Simon Clancy doesn't even have to be in Miami. He's over in London. Okay, he's running his whole own empire over there. They would post on these message boards. A certain local writer used to basically lift the posts, right, and claim that they came from a scout. Okay, what was the scout's name?
Chris Cordero.
Chris Cordero. Look it up on Google. He used to say that they came from a scout. The great Chris Cordero. It was actually the great Chris Kaufman and Simon Clancy. He would just lift this stuff from the message boards. That's all that he was doing, with a few word changes. And then suddenly, when I guess you guys protested at the time, Chris Cordero went into witness protection and was never seen again. And this particular writer mentioned in the blog that Chris Cordero is no longer working for us. I just want to say, if you ever followed Chris Cordero in the Miami Herald's copy during a certain period of time, he was a figment of someone's imagination based on Chris Kaufman and Simon Clancy. If you don't think that the mainstream writers, the mainstream analysts are paying attention to what's going on in the message boards, you're kidding yourself. Thanks to Alf. Appreciate it. And I do not recommend that, by the way. I never did it when I was on the mainstream side. Alf_Arteaga. Follow 3 yards per carry on Twitter as well. We know that he runs that one, except when it gets really cranky, and then it's Simon. Then he's the one who jumps in. Thanks, Alfredo.
Thank you.